What is good, y'all? Welcome back to Chris and Roth Productions. As always, I am Chris, and I hope you're having a wonderful evening. So we're just coming off of seeing Thunderbolts in theaters on Thursday. We have our out of theater reaction as well as our spoiler review on the channel. I'll go ahead and link that down below. But earlier today, a report from the Wall Street Journal came out. It is essentially just a report on Marvel Studios and what Kevin Feige is going to be doing moving forward for the MCU. And I have many thoughts. Some positive thoughts. I think what they could overall do going forward, because I think Thunderbolts was an absolute masterpiece. Looking forward to Fantastic Four, looking forward to Wonder Man, and so many other projects. But essentially, Kevin Feige just reflected on some of the missteps that they've had post Endgame, from 2020 on. Of course, when COVID started, they ran into a bit of an issues. Some of it was because of production, because of the world shutting down. Some of it was mandates that were given to him by the higher ups at Disney. And I just honestly just wanted to give my overall feelings and thoughts on the MCU the past 5 years and what I want to see and what I expect to see and what I hope to see going forward. I just want to preface this. So this is through Screen Rant. They essentially did a breakdown of the Wall Street Journal article because I don't have access to the Wall Street Journal article. So I'm just going to go through this. And then also, I just wanted to go through their upcoming movies, their past shows, and something that Kevin Feige said back in 2019 that stuck with me. So let's go ahead and get into this article. The No New Fans Club major MCU report details what went wrong at Marvel Studios in the early 2020s and how Kevin Feige is getting the franchise back on track. And he is getting it back on track. I totally agree with that. So let's go ahead. Look, Wall Street Journal. Um, so basically, a new report is came out that Kevin Feige was essentially spread so thin because of Bob Iger and of course Bob Chapek. Bob Chapek has since left Disney and Bob Iger came back, but through this article, I didn't really remember, but Bob Iger really mandated a lot of projects that was forced on Kevin Feige, and that that hurt Marvel for the last 5 years. Um, so right here it says Kevin Feige trying to satisfy parent company Disney's hunger for content on Disney Plus. Disney Plus launched in 2019, right? 2019. I remember Mandalorian came out, and it stretched Kevin Feige super thin. It got to the point where it was challenging to secure enough time with Feige to get his feedback. End quote. Um, so I guess this is what I want to start off with. So when it comes to the TV shows. And I'm gonna start off with the TV shows because we went a whole year without any MCU projects, and then we were blessed with WandaVision, and then we were blessed with many other shows and many other shows and many other shows and many other shows and many other shows, and it felt like it was a lot, even for someone who is a massive MCU fan. Who the MCU is my favorite out of anything. I love the MCU, and as someone who you would think, the more the merrier. It got to the point where it was the complete opposite. So let's start off with WandaVision. So, of course, WandaVision came out their first project in 2021 after a year of not having anything. And Matt Shackman, who's going to go on to direct Fantastic Four, or he already directed Fantastic Four First Steps, that comes out in July. And I think WandaVision, the 9 episodes, it felt like just that hit, that dose of Marvel that we were missing for a year. And it felt so good because this was the first MCU show. Agents of Shield, the Peggy Carter show, Inhumans and stuff. I don't even know if Inhumans is MCU adjacent, but those are MCU adjacent, not proper MCU, proper at least. Well, Peggy Carter's proper MCU. I guess I'm more so talking about Agents of Shield. And it was just like it was a phenomenon. Ever since WandaVision has come out, it's always been towards the top of my MCU shows. And there's been a couple of that's come out since then that's lowered it because it was my number one for a while. The finale, I'm not a big fan of, but that's not this video's not about that. And then we go on to, I think, the first project right off the bat that was affected by COVID and delays and everything, and that's Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Which, if you've seen Thunderbolts, really paid off after 4 years. Which I love Thunderbolts. And the thing about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, if you're not really aware, or if you're not aware at all, this was supposed to be the first project to come out before WandaVision, but it was delayed because of shooting, because they were shooting, I think, somewhere in Central America. I think, if I'm not mistaken, for a couple of scenes. And then they had to rewrite a good chunk of the script because the main premise was that the Flag Smashers were going to essentially release a virus onto the world. And this is in 2020, 2021. We're in the middle of a pandemic. That's not really escapism for people. So they had to do a massive rewrite. And I think that it really did affect the story. Malcolm Spellman, he's the head writer for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think he did best with what was given to him, but if I'm judging every show based off of the COVID years, I think in terms of Flag Smashers and execution, I think it was not one of my favorites. And I love Sam Wilson and I love Bucky. Those guys are like those are my leads right now in the MCU, and I think their show, besides them, the show was fine. Then we go to Loki. Loki banger. Season one banger. Uh, the cliffhanger kind of left me with a bad taste in my mouth, but I think what Loki was a little different because I think Kevin Feige, of course, was involved in all these projects, but you have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 10 shows. Well, 10, 11. I'm counting I Am Groot. 11 shows that came out within 2021 all the way to 2022. Of course, 2020 nothing, but still, regardless, if you get those 11 shows divided into 3 years, that's like three projects a year. One of the 2 of the years we get four. That's still a lot of projects that was greenlit by Marvel Studios that was being forced because of Disney Plus. And this is where I think the quality started to dip around Moon Knight. I love Hawkeye. There's people who are indifferent about it. It's in my top three MCU shows. But Moon Knight, I think, was the first major misstep in the MCU. But before we get into Moon Knight, let's get into these movies. To go back into the article, real quick, that in the report it mentions that staffers were forced to chase Kevin Feige in the hall to get answers. So Kevin Feige, he's one man. Even though he's a renaissance, there's only so much time he has. And if you have 11 shows, and that's not even counting the movies that you have to oversee over the course of 2 years, there's going to be quality control problems because you're going quantity over quality. And that's definitely the biggest issue at that time. And, to go to the movies, at this time we had Black Widow, which was already shot and done before the pandemic happened. I believe so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, some of it was. And then we had Shang-Chi, Eternals, No Way Home, which was this has a little like asterisk because this is a co-studio with Sony. Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, Wakanda Forever. I'm gonna stop right there before I get to 2023. So that's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, seven movies, 11 shows, 18 projects in the course of 2 years. If you want to consider three because of 2020, 18 projects in 3 years, they jumped from two movies a year to three movies and three shows a year, basically. 6, 12, 18, if you want to count the 2020 year. That is a recipe for disaster. And how do I want to phrase this? I've enjoyed more in Phase 4 and 5 than I disliked, if that makes sense. There's more stuff that I've liked than disliked. I think overall, the multiverse, it's mess is unfair because you have all these projects, and in order to get these all connected, they did it in the Infinity Saga. But when you introduce multiverse and you have all these different writers and all these different ideas and brainstormers, it starts to get more convoluted. But Black Widow, I like Black Widow a lot. Taskmaster and the villain, I forget his name from the Red Room, thought they were pretty weak. Um, but this paid off a lot in Thunderbolts. You know, 4 years later, we get a massive payoff for this movie. Shang-Chi, it's one of my favorite movies of these last two phases. It's one of my favorite uh origin story movies within the MCU. I saw this multiple times in theaters. I thought this was a home run. And I really didn't have high expectations for this movie because, it's in 2021. I was so focused on like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki and stuff that I didn't really forget about. So I knew it was coming out, but it wasn't like my main focal point. But this was very much a surprise. And then I'd say like around here, like again, No Way Home is an asterisk because that's a co-production with Sony. Eternals, Multiverse, Love and Thunder. I say this stretch of movies had some continuity, not continuity, but some. I think essentially what Kevin Feige, what he had for Eternals was to have Chloe Zhao, a wonderful director. She did, I think she did a good job with Eternals, but it's not really rewatchable for me. I've seen it once. No, I've seen it twice. I can name every Eternal. I'm not gonna do that right now, but I can name them. I know I can. Um, but they they're not gonna do anything with the Eternals. I don't think they are. I don't think we're gonna see them in Doomsday. I don't think, to be honest. I'm not gonna say no one cares because that incites that that every single person doesn't care, but that's not true. But I think majority of people do not care about Eternals, and I'm included in that. I'm fine if I don't see them again. Kingo, I love Kingo. Bring him back. But you know, Droog, Cersei, Icarus died, apparently died. Sprite, Athena, Makari. I really like Makari. Makari was really cool. Um, I just think it's just a forgettable movie for me personally. And then when we get into Multiverse of Madness, even though it made $900 million, and then that Multiverse of Madness was a success. I'm not going to make an argument that it was not successful because it was very successful. And I've seen it a handful of times, probably like 6 or 7 times. I've rewatched this movie. Um, but honestly, I can do a whole video on just Multiverse of Madness because there's been so many stories and just people have their takes who are within the Marvel Studios or people who report on Marvel Studios that Kevin Feige absolutely loves Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi is one of his favorite creators of all time, and I really love Sam Raimi too. I think some of his creative choices within this movie, it was very Sam Raimi esque, of course, but it did take me out of the movie a few times, and that's just me personally. But regardless, Doctor Strange, killer of a character. I can't wait to see him what he does in Doomsday. But and the reason why I bring this up is because you have Eternals, Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder. Three movies I think Kevin Feige just let the directors do what they do. Chloe Zhao she did her very artistic take on an MCU blockbuster movie, and that's the result that we got, whether you like it or not. Multiverse of Madness, Kevin Feige let Sam Raimi do what he does, and it made 900 million, but it's not. Having watched it already 5, 6, 7 times, I do have issues with some of the story, or not even the story, just the creative takes. And then Love and Thunder. This is sort of like the redheaded stepchild of the MCU in terms of movies so far. Because although I had a great time in theaters, over the last 3 years, so you just see every once in a while you see a headline: Chris Hemsworth did not love Love and Thunder. Taika Waititi most likely isn't going to be coming back for a fourth or fifth movie, which I would be fine with, and they need to go into a different direction. So even though I had a blast in this movie, I understand why most people, or at least why a lot of people don't like it. It is a box office success. It made, I think, 750 million, which is massive. So it's a success. And then Wakanda Forever, same thing. I think that made, I want to say like 800 plus. And Wakanda Forever, that of course looming over it was the passing of Chadwick Boseman. So there's only so much creative control that Kevin Feige could have on that movie. Ryan Coogler, phenomenal director. I've seen, I think, like 5 or 6 of his films in theaters, and he never disappoints. Wakanda Forever is not my favorite of the two. Black Panther 1 is still the better of the two. And then Namor is absolutely, that's my guy. So I want to see more of him. And I think, before we continue, we'll go into the next set of movies from 2023 to 2025, and then we'll go to the next set of shows. Um, I didn't really touch on these. Moon Knight, I was not a fan of. Episode 5 is really good. Miss Marvel, it took me a while to watch it. I finally watched it late last year, 2024. Miss Marvel, I had a blast. I still don't like the hard light power. I think they should have just had her regular powers from the comics. But Miss Marvel is such a great character. I Am Groot, it's cute. I mean, what else are you gonna say? I am a She-Hulk defender. I don't care what anybody says. I absolutely love this show. Are there a couple of filler episodes? Yes, of course. But I want to see Jennifer Walters continue in whatever aspect that is, whether they do a season two, which I don't think they're going to do a season two, or whether she pops up in the Avengers movies, or if they do when they do a Fantastic Four sequel, I'd love to see her in that She-Hulk. At one point she's part of the Fantastic Four. So I definitely want to see this. Some of you probably rolling your eyes. I do not care. Werewolf by Night, absolute banger. No notes. Hollywood special, Hollywood holiday special, banger. No notes. But to be very subjective, around this time, I say between these three projects, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, and Secret Invasion, which we'll get into in a little bit. I think this is where Kevin Feige was pretty much spread thin, and he didn't really have he and to go back into it, that they had to make last minute decisions. And this was, the title of this Screen Rant article, the No New Fan Club. That Kevin Feige is basically saying that Marvel Studios feels like homework, and that going forward they're going to do 1 to 2 shows a year, and that they want projects to not feel like you have to watch 5,000 projects to understand the storyline in it, and which I absolutely love. Even though I am watching every project, I want to take my family, I want to take my friends, or I want to see these movies with my friends and family who aren't like me, who don't watch every single project, but I want them to watch the new Spider-Man movie coming out next year, and I want them to be able hold my microphone, and I want them to be able to understand the story and not feel like they're lost because they have to watch Infinity War, Endgame, No Way Home, Far From Home. They got to watch this, and that. Even though that would be fun to watch all those Spider-Man movies, it does feel like homework at times, and that goes to this article. In 2019 at D23 Expo, this is whenever Feige at D23 Expo started announcing all these projects. The Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, She Hulk, and he said something that has stuck with me since he said this in 2019. That none of these shows are required to be watched before watching a movie in theaters. And if you've seen any of these movies, that is not the case at all. And Multiverse of Madness is the biggest example of that. If someone goes from Endgame to watching Multiverse of Madness, which is the next project that has Doctor Strange, excuse me, not well, Doctor Duh right here, but the next project that has like Scarlet Witch, you're gonna be like, why is she a villain? Well, you didn't watch WandaVision. You didn't see what happened to her in this show. you didn't see that she got a hold of the dark hold at the end of in that post credit scene. So for them to move away from that, I love. And then I'm gonna speed through some of these next projects because I want to get into the future of the MCU and what I want to see. But we have Quantumania, was not a fan of, and I love the Ant Man franchise, but this one dropped the ball. I have a lot of notes, and I don't have time to get into them. Guardians of the Galaxy is in my top 5 MCU movies of all time. I think James Gunn, there's a reason why he's the head of DC Studios. He's a phenomenal writer, and this is a banger. The Marvels was not a fan of. It is the lowest performing MCU movie in their history. With that being said, I am not on the hate train for these actresses. And if you hate on them and if you say they're this and they're that, you're weird. You can critique them, but when people make it personal about Brie Larson and Tiana Prince and Iman Vellani and all that, get a life, dude. Please, like that's weird. I was almost cussed. I didn't want to cuss. Deadpool Wolverine. Our out of theater reaction, I damn near was smiling ear to ear. Had an absolute blast. Since this coming out, I've realized Deadpool 1 is still my favorite Deadpool. Because in terms of story, it's just a cameo fest, but that's fun. That's what the fans wanted, and it was a massive box office success. Ryan Reynolds is going to continue with Deadpool. I'll get into that in a little bit, and then we'll get into our last two movies. Brave New World, I enjoyed. Malcolm Spellman was the writer, and this time there really was no excuse on why there was plot issues, and I felt them in this movie, and I felt them in Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I don't know how they're gonna handle um this storyline going forward. Of course they're gonna go into that's a lie. I do know how they're gonna handle it. They're going into Avengers Doomsday. Sam Wilson is gonna make the new Avenger. Sorry, not the new Avengers. He's gonna make a Avengers team and an Avengers team. Um, but with that being said, I had a blast in this movie. I did. Even with my critiques, it's just not my it's just it didn't meet my expectations, and I had high expectations for this movie. And Thunderbolts, like I mentioned, it's in my top 5 MCU movies. So you have two movies that's come out within the last 2 years, and they're both in my personal top 5, and I think that's an absolute win. Thunderbolts banger. I don't want to get into any spoilers if you haven't seen it. I'll leave our spoiler review in the description. So before we get into the next set of movies, let's get into our TV shows. I don't want to talk about that one. Loki season 2 banger. What If I enjoyed season 3, was not a fan of. It was okay. Echo, uh, fine. It was forgettable, to be honest. Really, nothing stuck with me from this show, but I didn't hate it. It just wasn't something that I would rewatch. X-97 banger. Agatha All Along banger. Had no expectation. No, that's a lie. When it was announced, I really was like, oh, I mean, I guess. But when it got closer with more trailers, I got super hyped. Ralph and I went to an early screening for the first two episodes, and we love this. Agatha All Along is so good. Like I mentioned, What If season 3, not my favorite. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, had a lot of fun. I can't wait for season 2. Um, so we'll see how they continue that. And then the most recent TV show, Daredevil Born Again. To go back into the Kevin Feige article about changes going forward, I think towards the beginning of 2024, the end of 2023, I think that's when Kevin Feige and them realized like we have to have a creative overhaul. And we're not going to see the results right away. So if you go back and look at some of the projects from 2022, 2020, no, from 2023, 2024, you're probably thinking, oh, it wasn't my favorite. They could have done this, they could have done that. But I mean, it takes time for these creative decisions to really kick in over time. So the reason why I'm talking about Daredevil is because if you don't know, Daredevil was supposed to be 18 episodes. They shot like 6 of the episodes. They scrapped everything, damn near everything. They The original script and the original show that they were shooting didn't even have Punisher. It didn't have Karen. It didn't have Foggy, you know? And it just basically wasn't going to have that much or any connections to the Netflix show. And Kevin Feige made the right decision to have a creative overhaul. And I love Daredevil Born Again. it is an amazing MCU show. So now going forward, we have Ironheart, Eyes of Wakanda, Marvel Zombies, and Wonder Man. Ironheart comes out June 2024. June 2024. June 24th, excuse me. We don't have a trailer. We barely have a teaser. I think Ironheart has been done for 2 years, like filmed. Like it's been ready to come out for like 2 years. And I'm not even going to speculate. I am going to speculate on why it hasn't come out. I think this can be added to the pile of projects: Ironheart, Secret Invasion, Moon Knight, you know. I think it can be added to that pile of projects that Kevin Feige was like, we got to add content to Disney Plus. She's off of Wakanda Forever. Wakanda Forever, I loved Okoye. I thought Shuri did a great job. But the Riri Williams storyline I thought didn't fit at all. And you could tell they introduced her because we have to soft launch Ironheart for the Ironheart TV show. That was what, you know, 3 years, and they haven't really done anything with her. And now her TV show comes out, and they're not even advertising it. They're probably just gonna shadow drop it. They're gonna drop a teaser or trailer. They're gonna do it because it's an MCU project. But I think they're shadow dropping it, and it's unfortunate for the actress who plays Riri Williams. Her name is escaping me. I do apologize. Because I've seen her in many other projects, like Judas and the Black Messiah. She's in that. She's so freaking good. But Ironheart is a show that I am gonna watch, but I don't really have high expectations because I think it worries me that they're not even advertising it. So, but on the opposite spectrum of excitement, Eyes of Wakanda I'm hyped for, Marvel Zombies I'm hyped for, and Wonder Man beyond hyped for because Yaya Abdul, one of my favorite actors in Hollywood, and he is going to play Simon Williams in this TV show. And they've had a little bit of a teaser, as the same thing with Ironheart, but this comes out in December. This comes out next month, so I expect to not have any footage for this in May. But I want to see something for this, which comes out next month, and they don't have anything. But and then in terms of movies, where do I begin? Fantastic for First Steps is my most anticipated movie of the year. That and Superman, but this is a Marvel video. And you know, I think they're good. I don't know what they're gonna do with Blade. I really don't. I don't know what they're gonna do. And to go back to the article, is what does Marvel Report means for the MCU's future? Of course, we have Doomsday, we have Spider-Man Brand New Day, we have X-Men going forward, Blade. I don't even know if that's gonna happen, but they still have it on their. This is the official Marvel.com site. They still have it on here. Blade. I don't know. They should, after seeing Sinners, they need to just get Ryan Coogler to just come out and do it. I wanted Jordan Peele to do it at first, which I still love to see Jordan Peele do it. But after watching Sinners, I need him to direct Blade. Um, but going forward, seeing Kevin Feige saying that they did make mistakes in terms of quantity over quality, it gives me beyond hope that we are going to get these amazing projects because Thunderbolts was a banger. Fantastic Four, I think, is going to be a banger. This movie does not exist. They're in the process of shooting this movie, and whenever Robert Downey Jr. uploaded a photo of him, see, can I name everybody in that photo? Him, Simu Liu, Chris Hemsworth, Winston Duke, Anthony Mackie, Ebon, Vanessa Kirby, Robert Downey Jr. of course. Is there anybody else? Oh, Paul Rudd. um, they're on set, and when he uploaded a photo of them, watching Thunderbolts, it got me Endgame excited. I haven't had that feeling since Endgame, and to get more into Doomsday right now. I think Doomsday is going to be a multi-billion-dollar film I think the marketing and the red carpet and the interviews, it's gonna feel like Endgame level hype. And we still have first steps. We still have these set of shows to go forward. Wonder Woman's been done for a while too. I forgot to mention that. But to focus more on the movies, because I don't think these are gonna have any implications for um Doomsday. Maybe Wonder Man, maybe Ironheart. I don't know between the two, but and then after Doomsday, we get Spider-Man: Brand New Day, which of course is a co-studio project. Did I mention I kind of skipped over No Way Home. Um, I rented out a theater for No Way Home, and it's such a blast, and I'll forever remember seeing that in theaters. I've seen it multiple times. We have multiple copies of it on Blu-ray. In terms of story, it's not my favorite Spider-Man movie. Even though it's really good. I have a few other Spider-Man movies that I prefer in terms of story, but No Way Home is such a banger. All right, back to No Way Home. I mean, back to Spider-Man. Brand New Day. It's a co-production. They're fast tracking it. They start shooting this summer. I think it's crazy that we get our next set of four films is a Fantastic Four movie, an Avengers movie, a Spider-Man movie, and another Avengers movie. That's crazy, man. The next the next 2 years is going to be bangers upon bangers upon bangers. And I can't wait for that. I cannot wait. Um, but the big question that a lot of people have is, are they going to have a full reboot after Secret Wars? And the answer to at first, if you would have asked me this a year ago, I would have said I think most likely yes. But now I don't think so. Maybe I don't know. But Kevin Feige, from the Wall Street Journal article, I believe from the Wall Street Journal article, has told people within the studio that he already has the next 10 years planned out for X Men. Excuse me. And if he already has the next 10 years planned out for X Men, that means he's gonna reflect on the last 5 years through the good and the bad of his projects. He's gonna learn from any of the mistakes that they've made as a studio, and they're gonna implement any of the great decisions that they've made, and they're gonna make the X Men saga probably bigger than the Infinity Saga. And we're in for a wild ride for the X Men. Blade, I don't think it's happening. Um, but you know, I love the fact that we're getting this information from Kevin Feige himself because when you have such a massive studio and the most successful movie studio in the history of cinema, when I say you, I don't mean Kevin Feige. I just mean anybody involved and anybody watching these movies. You can feel sort of invincible for like you can't do no wrong. But you learn that we're human. You learn that Kevin Feige isn't a robot, and that in the early 2020s, up until a couple of years ago, he was spread super thin to the point where he had essentially zero oversight, which is a lie, which is an exaggeration. But he might as well have had zero oversight on some of those movies and some of those TV shows that's come out, whether you liked them or not, or overall consensus weren't the best projects. But that article from the Wall Street Journal and of course some Screen Rant, thank you. I've already had hope the last few months because of Brave New World and Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four and Daredevil and all that. But I haven't had this feeling for the MCU since Endgame or since Infinity War. Endgame was a different level of hype, but I haven't had this excitement since Infinity War. Um, so Kevin Feige said himself that they're going to do only 1 to 2 shows a year, and in terms of movies, they might stick to the maybe 2 to 3 a year. So that brings it out to 4 to 5 at most projects a year, and that's way more manageable than 9 to 10 projects a year. That's including animation. Because 2025 alone, there's like 9 projects coming out. Right? Let me already have I have them in front of me. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. 9 projects are going to come out in the year 2025 from Marvel Studios. And then when it comes to 2026, one, two movies. And as of right now, there's no shows. I know we're getting Vision Quest, which I can't wait because Vision Quest is going to be, I think, the first TV show that we're going to see that's going to have Kevin Feige really have sink his teeth into it because he's not going to be spread thin as because they've learned more is not merrier for the MCU. Um, so I think keep an eye out for Vision Quest. I think that comes out next year, if not the year after. Um, but Marvel, I'm glad that they reflected and they're going to be back on track. So this is already what almost 40 minutes long. um, I guess my question to you is, how have you felt about Marvel post Endgame? And after seeing Kevin Feige and what he had to say about the studio over the last 5 years and going forward, um, what projects are you looking forward to? What do you think they can do differently as compared to the last 5 years, good or bad? So let me know down below. I appreciate y'all's support. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. As always, I'm Chris. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.